Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We've got a small turnout, and that's fine. I think maybe a lot of people ran out of steam. So I appreciate everyone being here, and I'm really excited everyone has their cameras on. Thank you. This makes it a lot more fun for us. So I'm Julia Fulghum. I'm the Director of Advance at UNM. And I apologize, I'm going to be like muting and things because my allergies are bad. So I'll try not to like cough over people. So I'd like to start by, I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and then I'm gonna have everyone who's watching introduce themselves. And if you have a question you wanna make sure we cover, go ahead and tell us. And then I will go over the high points of the presentation that was sent out, and then we'll start the panel discussion and learn if any of us are actually capable of taking our own advice. So I'd like to start with asking the panelists to introduce themselves, and I will start with Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Broidy. I'm chair of the Department of Sociology and have done a lot of service.
Tryphenia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tryphenia Peele-Eady. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Language, Literacy, and Sociocultural Studies and Associate Dean for Equity, Inclusion, and Faculty in the College of Education and Human Sciences. And I was prepared to share an interesting fact about myself.
Go for it.
Well, that just may actually have some bearing on the conversation today and the way that I come to view service and approach it. I'm also the first African-American to be tenured in the history of the College of Education, formerly College of Education, now College of Education and Human Sciences. And I currently remain the only Black faculty member on tenure track, because our Dean Hansel Burley, is also African-American. So that certainly governs how I go about thinking about service. Interesting fact.
Thank you. Tina.
Hi, I'm Cristina Takacs-Vesbach. I'm a professor and chair of biology. And I have a fun fact to share about me. Let's see, Irene, this one might interest you. I've been to Cuba twice. The first time I was I was hijacked there. And the second time I sailed there with friends.
Wow. Okay, there's a story there we need to hear later.
Yeah.
Irene.
You know.
Irene.
Hi, my connection is not very good. Irene Salinas, I'm associate professor in biology and associate chair, working with Tina. And I just landed in Cuba. I barely made it. So it's just to follow the fun fact from Tina.
Okay, we're going to quickly go around the Zoom room for the audience. Give us, introduce yourself with your name and department. And if you have a burning question you want to make sure we cover, let us know. So Zeb.
Hi, I'm Zeb. I'm in Department of Mathematics and Statistics. I do not have a burning question.
Monique.
Hi, I'm Monique Rodriguez. I'm in the College of Ed Department of Individual, Family, and Community Education. And I don't have a burning question yet. I think I'll wait to hear what's covered.
You are welcome to interrupt at any time and post burning questions in chat or raise your hand. We want this to be interactive. Marigold.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for hosting this. My name is Marigold Walsh-Dillian. I'm associate professor in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies. I don't yet have a burning question other than how do I manage my service load? Thank you.
There. Jing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jingjing Wang. I'm a assistant professor of economics in the College of Social Sciences. I don't have a burning question. I just submitted my tenure package last fall. I'm still waiting on that. But I expect, like I'm wondering how my service load will change over like after this year. And that's why I'm here. I really hope to learn more and hear more stories here. Thank you.
Bill.
Yeah, I'm Bill Stanley. I'm a professor in political science and associate provost for faculty success. And I'm just kind of listening to hear what kind of questions folks have and what kind of thoughts the panelists have. So thanks.
I am not sure how to pronounce your name, so forgive me. Ajuan?
Yes, thank you, Julia. So hello, everyone. I'm Adrian. I'm a current assistant professor in the Department of Language, Literacy, and Sociocultural Studies in the College of Education and Human Sciences. Now, I don't have the burning question, but I like this session, so I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, thank you. Very happy to be here.
Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Gonzalez Cardenas. I'm an assistant professor in Chicano Studies, and no burning questions so far.
Hansel.
Hansel Burley, Dean at the College of Education and Human Sciences. And I'm here to support my colleagues who are here attending and presenting.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I sent out a little bit of a brief presentation in advance, and I'm going to hit the high points of that, and then we'll move to the panel discussion. And I think a lot of what you are, I hope what you're going to see is there's no one size fits all solution here. And I think we'll all sort of agree this is something that we all still are dealing with. So if you're a recently promoted associate professor or you're about to be promoted, there's a certain amount of, hey, congratulations, here's a committee, and here's a committee chairmanship, and here's a committee. And you are not protected quite as much from request, or perhaps not at all, as you probably are as an assistant professor. The assumption in general is that associate professors have a higher service load, but some of you may already be doing a lot. So you may not see as big a change, but you may see you're asked to have roles that have a higher responsibility. Service is very much an expectation for promotion to professor in a different way than it is for tenure and promotion. And you're expected, and we will talk about this, to be doing service for the department, for the college, your school or college and the university, professionally on some level, and many people really value service to their community. I think one message that we're trying to consistently get across is we all have to contribute to the functioning of the university. And neither feigned helplessness, well, if I just do a really bad job, no one will ever ask me to do anything again, or martyrdom, oh, okay, I'll do that too, really help the department or the institution. And part of what we would really like to see is more people acknowledging the need for this level of work for the institution, which would mean lots of people who are currently doing too much can maybe have a more reasonable approach. You want to keep in mind the difference between explicit service, which is things you were formally assigned or elected to do, and things that result from requests or obligations that may be based on gender, race, or ethnicity. And there is a lot of implicit service that can come along. If you are, as Tryphenia was pointing out, the only African-American faculty member in a department or college or school, the African-American students may come to you for advice preferentially. And they may be people outside your department, they may be people outside your college or school. This is not something you're assigned to do. But these are the sorts of things that many of us find ourselves doing. And The default has been not to count that in the workload, and we are very much working on having people make sure they are documenting all this sorts of things they are doing. And you'll hear me say in many different venues, anything you do to help students really counts as part of teaching. You're advancing the educational mission of the university, and we can talk about that if people want to. There's also explicit service that can be associated with identity because we require diverse representation on search committees, hiring committees, you know, a range of different things like that that can also really impact service loads. This picture is a group of women faculty from right after the advance grant was funded in advance of the first workshop we did on service, where we counted and we figured among the 7 of us in the picture, we'd been on something like 70 or 80 search committees, just as an example, whereas I know men at UNM who've only been on one and have been here a long time. I don't know many women who've only been on one. So, you know, all around we're surrounded by institutions that run on volunteer labor, you know, our professional organizations, a lot of community organizations, our departments, you know, the university. And women and BIPOC faculty tend to do a lot more university service. They tend to be more involved in mentoring, get asked to be on search committees because of the diversity requirements we have, be on diversity committees, and frequently be more involved in what gets called institutional housekeeping. So things like accreditation and curriculum. And there's a lot of different reasons, some of which can be feeling obligated or expected to help communities that we are related to. And part of that, of course, is some of that can be the most personally rewarding work. That may be the things we really want to do. So then the question is, how do you take that and make it officially part of the things you're doing? So you're not doing that as an in addition to other formal assignments. And if you are a member of an underrepresented group, you may get a lot of requests to be on college or school or university committees, and you may feel like you can't say no. And sometimes you should be able to say no. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And the pandemic has made all of this worse. This pandemic's made everything worse. This is one of them. So a couple of guidelines, everyone needs to develop their own guidelines, but a few things to think about. You want to try and simultaneously be gracious, responsive, and protect your own time. If you have to say no sometimes, but you're doing it graciously, then it's not going to be as big a problem as if you're hostile about it, because you do have to, you know, protect your time. So you want to figure out a few sorts of guidelines that might work for you. If you get lots of requests for letters of recommendations for students, have something in writing that says exactly what you want from the student and how far in advance you want it if you're going to write a letter. One of my favorite things to do, particularly if I'm teaching freshmen or sophomores, so it's a big class with lots of low stakes assignments, say, okay, you got 12 problem sets. You can turn 3 of them in late. Here's my definition of late. And I will drop the 2 lowest grades on these, and you don't, so that means you can just not turn in 2. Here's the catch. This is only the case if you don't tell me why they're late. If it's a low stakes assignment and the answer is, you know, I had a big test in another class, I had a big project due, I had to work a late shift, life happens. You want them to use their creativity and energy on the assignment in their classes. Obviously, if someone's got a really big issue, you want them to come talk to you about it. But if it's just like they need some slack, tell them, hey, don't tell me why it's late. Just take the grace. We've got a lot of resources available to support students. It helps to know what they are. We can help with that. If you have students coming to you for advice and it's not something confidential, can you meet with them as a group? This can help support peer mentoring. They can support each other, and maybe it helps cut down on your time. Okay, the landscape for department service has completely changed. So everybody's got a workload document now, and the service expectations should be in the workload document, and they have to be specific by rank. So know what's expected in your department. And the upside to this should be that all of this becomes more transparent. So everyone should know who's doing what in the department and how the department views that, and which assignments come with some sort of teaching release or SAC and which ones don't. So this should actually help you know better what is expected in your department. And there is, of course, a required workload expectations meeting now, and service should annually, and service should be part of that. So you should be easier to ask some questions about this within your department. For opportunities on the college or school and the university, one thing you want to do is think about what's an unusual opportunity. Will you be on the search committee for a new dean versus what's an opportunity that comes up annually or every other year. So colleges and schools always need promotion and tenure committees. You know, faculty senate opportunities come up every year. And so there's a different way to think about something that is an unusual opportunity where maybe you really want to say yes, even if it's going to be a time sink, and an opportunity where maybe you want to say, you know, not this year, but I'd love to do it next year or in 2 years. A lot of department services, there's some department service assignments that are a lot of work. Don't take these on just for a year unless there's some special circumstance that means that makes sense. And don't agree to an open-ended appointment. Things like associate chair, graduate director, being in charge of accreditation, can take an academic year to figure out what the cycle is. So maybe you want to say, I'll do this for 3 years. That's long enough to figure out what the cycle is, figure out how you can make it better, have a positive impact. So then negotiate this. And maybe if you take on a particularly heavy duty in the department, then your workload expectation after that period can be a lighter load. So think about these things, not just in terms of a year, but over several years. Similarly, over several years, you want to have a relatively balanced portfolio contributing to your department, the institution, your profession, and your community. You don't have to do all of these all the time. You probably want some engagement with your profession all the time because that's how you build up your reputation and develop other opportunities. And what balance looks like is really field specific. So you want to be talking to people in your department, but also think about service as a way to try something different, a way to do things that fit with what you really enjoy, a way to learn more about UNM, a way to learn more about colleagues. I've taken on some college or institutional opportunities sometimes because I've really thought the people on the committee sounded like fun. And they've become, you know, then colleagues that I enjoy throughout my career. And take notes, document your explicit and implicit service so that when you are applying for promotion and tenure or promotion to professor, you can really tell the story about how you've contributed to the institution. One of the best things you can do is round up some colleagues to be your committee of no. Sometimes they're your committee of yes, but you want a couple of people. Doesn't have to be a lot. 2's good, 3's better. That can help you decide whether the answer to big things, not small, you know, things, but big time commitments is, yeah, do it. Or have you looked at your calendar? Don't. So, you know, talk to a few people who know you, who you can talk to in confidence, and, you know, who can help you think through this. If it's a small thing, you can probably say yes or no right away. If it's a big thing, you should think about it. You should go stare at your calendar, think about it, and get some more information. Don't agree to anything in a hallway conversation. I frequently forget what I've, you know, people ask me things, I'm walking across campus, I forget. So say, can you email me that? Or say, let me think about it and I'll email you. And depending on how much time you've got today, tomorrow, if you're interested, but not sure, ask to talk about it. If you really want to do it, but can't do it right now, let people know, you know, can you keep me in mind for next semester, next year, the next time this is open? Because there's some things that we really do want to do, but we don't have time to do right now. And that's a great thing to let people know. And there's also, if after you do some investigation, you're not sure why you're being asked to do it, it's like, you know, I don't think I'm the right person, but thanks. So you want to ask yourself some things when you're considering a big new project or time commitment. Not all of these questions will be relevant all the time, but there's a few things to think about. Does it make sense for you to do the work? Is there a good reason for you to be doing it? Will it have an impact? Will it help you somehow? Will it help the department? Will it help the university? Will it help the college? Will it help your profession? Can you leverage it other ways? Do you just want to spend time with the people that are on the committee so you'll get to know them better? And what internally does your gut say about this? I have to admit, the times I've done something where internally I'm going, I don't think so, I should have listened to my internal voice. If it's a big assignment, some things to ask other people. Who's the committee chair? How often does it meet? What did they do last time? Here's a good question people don't think about. At what point in this semester is the workload the highest? And what you're trying to learn is some of the answers to the questions on the previous slide. And the big question is this a worthwhile expenditure of my time or a soul-destroying pit of despair? And one person's soul-destroying pit of despair is another person's worthwhile effort. So this has really got to be about you and the work you find meaningful. At a question and answer session we had with James Holloway and Ellen Fisher for new associate professors recently, Holloway talked about how he'd really enjoyed being on the curriculum committee, and Fisher talked about how she'd rather do anything than be on a curriculum committee. So think about the sorts of work you find meaningful, not, the person in the office next to you. If you do get asked to chair a committee, think about the other people's time. Try not to schedule meetings at the last minute. Have an agenda that the committee knows about. Couple of really important things. Know which issues require a decision, at that meeting and which ones can be postponed so people can think about it. Related to that, some important decisions may require you to go along and have one-on-one conversations with everyone on the committee before the committee meets to discuss them. Not because you want to tell them what to say, but because you want to know what people are thinking confidentially, so you know where the rough patches might be and you can think about how to navigate that conversation. You want to let everyone on a committee participate. There's a lot of different ways to do that. If you can't make that happen in the meetings, make sure people know that they can provide feedback by email. If you finish the work you need to do in the meeting, particularly right now, if there's time left, don't say, well, as long as we're here, thank people and let them go early, particularly like I said right now. The best advice I got as an assistant professor was credit isn't diluted by being shared. Acknowledge good ideas, contributions, acknowledge the committee efforts. And if you're getting staff support, make sure you acknowledge and appreciate that. And lastly, say no rather than find yourself unable to do the work. If you do get pressured to saying yes and start to feel like you're drowning, seek help as soon as you recognize it. People in general are willing to help if you come to them and ask. And just be honest, not hostile or defensive, just be honest. I just took on too much, I need help. If you're on a committee but not the chair, talk to the chair. Can a deadline change? Can you play a smaller role? Can you help get other people involved? If you are the committee chair, seek help from the committee. Seek help from administrative support if you have it. Talk to your department chair about how to get the committee on track. But the sooner you acknowledge it, the easier it'll be to get help from other people. And that's a quick summary of some things to consider. And at this point, we are going to ask some questions of the panelists, and then we will address some of the questions in the chat, although I see Zeb has one. What is meant by community service and how much of it is expected? That is a great question and extremely field discipline and department specific, but that could mean anything from, you're in math, so it could be outreach to K-12 to try and get more students interested in STEM. It could be working with a local arts community. It could be working with Native American faculty. It could be working with their Pueblo or tribe. It is a range of things depending on the discipline. And that is not required or expected necessarily, but it's the service lots of people enjoy. And there is actually a Committee B task force that is looking at some aspects of how these things are defined from promotion and tenure, and community engagement is going to be more explicitly included as something that is valued. So you're welcome. That's a good question. With some of these ideas of the background, I like the panel to start out with, let's hear from each panel member about how do you approach service for yourself, and how have your decisions been related to sort of your professional trajectory, or your values, just because there's different ways people think about it. And Tryphenia, would you like to start?
Sure, no problem. Thank you for that, Julie. You caught me with that one, right? So how do I approach service for myself? And then how are those decisions related to my own values? And I'll just preface this by saying I'm in education, and this came up in Julia's slides about the differences, having to acknowledge the differences across disciplines, across colleges here at UNM, as well as across universities. There are different expectations, and different expectations yield different consequences, and those consequences play out differently even here among our colleagues. We might talk to a person here or talk to a person there, and it's quite different. So I just want to say, I think that acknowledging those differences is important because it adds to the complexity of this subject of what it means to do service. So having said that, I try to be really intentional about service. It's also what I advise others to do, to be intentional about it. I think about it in terms of both my professional and personal commitments. And professionally, I think about it, and with regard to my values, I think about it in a tiered way. As a member of the university community, then I try to contribute at every level. And it's also what I advise others to do, to think about it at the program level, the department level, the college level, and the university and the profession. And this means, attending and being present, fully present at department meetings and other meetings that we may have, and thinking about them positively with a shared goal in mind, that I'm a member of this community, and it's a responsibility to be there. And I'm also cognizant that I make those decisions based on what interests me. Julia talked about when to say no and when to say yes. Sometimes it's out of eagerness to see change. And so I want to be, if I'm going to see the change, I want to be a member at the table, have a seat at the table and be a part of the decision-making. And sometimes it's about something that, I want to know more about. I'm not enthusiastic about budgets, but I certainly want to know how they operate and how they might affect me. So I could potentially sign up for a budget committee. And I also think, in terms of professional commitments, I think about what's going to help me advance my scholarship, what's going to help me advance my teaching. So I don't think about service necessarily as separate from my scholarship and my teaching. And that's both as a Black woman, as a Black faculty member, Black woman faculty member, that also has consequences. And in terms of the other personal decisions I make with regard to service, there are civic issues about which I'm very passionate and I'm committed to, and it doesn't really matter what anyone says about those or the opinions that people have. Those are the things that if they require me, if they're driven by my heart and they require me to be there, that's where I'm going to be. So that's my constellation of complexity around my approach.
Thank you. Lisa.
So I am going to echo a lot of those themes, I think. Probably all of us are, especially the theme of intentionality in service and the theme of passion in service. I think those are really important guiding goals. I think what those things mean change as your career evolves. I think when I first got here, those things led me to take on kind of random service roles because I didn't really know what I was interested in, where my skill set lied, and I didn't really understand the inner workings of the department or the university. And I was kind of anxious to jump at chances to just learn a little bit more. And then I think as my scholarship evolved, and I think the idea of pairing your scholarship with your service, especially at the associate level, where your scholarship is still kind of has to be primary because you're still thinking about advancement to full, but service also becomes more important. Figuring out how to pair those in ways that work for you is really important. For me, that meant doing a lot of service when I was an associate professor around the things that I cared about at that time, which really were research and thinking about how to support my own research and other people's research. And so I was on the IRB, I ran a research institute, I did service that really kind of supported my goals and interests and passions at the time. More recently, I think my goals and interests and passion lie more in helping my junior colleagues and supporting my colleagues more broadly. And also the grad program. So I was grad director for a long time. And I think that kind of is the in-between between the research, because the grad program is so central to the core research mission of the department. And then kind of moving towards supporting colleagues, and as chair, obviously supporting your colleagues is kind of the primary goal of that role. And there's a lot of thanklessness in that job, but there's also a lot of, opportunities to really support and promote the program and your faculty colleagues and the graduate students. And those are the things that right now are important to me, that and supporting the discipline and the profession more generally. So outside of UNM, I have always been very active in the discipline. And I think the thing at that level and at the university level too, that also guides me aside from, my interest in research and passion for my colleagues and all those other things, is I just really like people and collaboration. And so opportunities in the discipline are really about collaborating with my colleagues that I don't get to see every day. I've built a lot of kind of, again, pairing service and research. I've built a lot of research collaborations through service collaborations to the discipline. And so that's a really important and useful way to expand your scholarship network. And so again, kind of when you think about intentional service, that's another really important avenue to intentional service that will benefit your scholarship in the long run too. And I think that probably covers most of it and overlaps a lot with what Tryphenia said.
Well, we'll declare anything else for, as you say, to be a universal truth. Irene.
Yeah, I do not have much more to add because I agree totally, and I wish I had had that information when I started being an assistant professor, because I think yeah, I just wanted to learn, but it's so much more you find so much more satisfaction when you choose to do service that is meaningful and that you feel like you can contribute for sure. So the only thing I want is that it's okay to do things for 2-3 years where you're learning, and then it's okay to say, I realize that this is not my thing. I saw how this worked, and it's nothing, like Tryphenia said, it's not in my heart to be here. And it's okay, you learn during that time, you met people, you make the most of it, and then you quit and you say, there's so much other people who are much better at this than me. So I think that's okay. For me, I definitely feel the most joy doing diversity, equity, and inclusion activities. And this is why we are fighting hard for those to be recognized as part of, I don't want to call it service, but at least part of our promotion and tenure on our, annual performance reviews. And I think overall, integrating, of course, those activities with your research. If you're getting NSF funding, just choose to have some broader impacts there that are really meaningful and give you a lot of joy while you're doing it. And not just find joy whenever you're doing the service. Is it because you love the people you are in that committee and you have a laugh and you crack a few jokes? That helps you relax a little bit from your department committees if you are in a college one or in a university-wide one, or you're in an editorial board of a journal and you chat with people you had met in the past because you talk together somewhere, or I don't know. But there's always ways that those committees can help you relax or switch off from your everyday life. And you may not see the benefit at the time, but you may find later, 5 or 10 years later, oh yeah, we started this committee together when we were both forever, and now we are friends and we are helping each other, or stuff like that. So I think the nice thing about UNM is that most people are lovely, and we tend to be really have fun when we do these things. But it's true that sometimes I'm sitting in committees and I can see how a couple of us will carry most of the work, and 3 people never show up. They always arrive half an hour late, or they never done what they were supposed to be doing. They never turn out their comments, this and that. And it's just advice for the assistant professors. If you are in one of those committees where you feel that people are doing the service and getting free credit for service that they're actually not performing and not caring about, it's okay to go to your chair and say, I'm in this committee with 3 or 4 other people. I'm doing 80% of the work because this, and this, I'm not showing up. This, and this never answer the emails. It's okay, go and talk to your chair, because I feel like service is the one thing that people get away with the most, not doing a good job, because there's not so much of a tracking of the quality of your service. And it's not the same to do service as to do good service. And that's one thing that I've really seen through the years, how the same people over and over and over again. It's not that we do a lot of services, that we care about what we do and what we are there, and we do our homework, and we are always responsive by email immediately. We're always there at the meetings. We never have lame excuses. And it does put a lot on us, because there's half of the people, if you get unlucky and you're in a committee where half of the people don't show up, it's a lot more work. So don't be afraid of just going to talk to your mentors. If you're an assistant professor, talk to your mentors to say, I'm not enjoying being in this committee. Talk to your chair to say, this committee is not what I expected because I'm doing 10 times more work than I should be. All of those things are my suggestions for the junior faculty.
Tina.
I'll just briefly say that I agree with everything that's been said. And for me, I think about service a lot less sophisticatedly, if that's a word, sorry. But is it going to be fun? And am I going to make some new friends? And that's my major driver for service these days. I didn't have that luxury when I was an assistant professor, but now that's how I decide. And can I address this question that Monique put in the chat?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so wondering if the panel can share more about how to recognize when service is not a good choice and or does not add to your progress towards promotion and tenure. And so I think at the local level here at the university, you know, it's not fair if you're being bombarded with service requests or demands when you're an assistant professor or even an associate professor. But one thing that I learned when I was associate chair back in 2011, 2013 is that there's just a lot of work to be done around here. And so I feel like, yes, there are jobs that I would not be good at, but we all have to pitch in. And so I think the jobs that you should be wondering whether or not they're good for your progress towards promotion are more outside of the university. Like, do you really need to be that associate editor when you're still an assistant professor? And, you know, is that really going to, is it going to take away from your research and hinder your progress to make tenure? Those are the kinds of questions I would be asking myself. Maybe others have different approaches, but I think that question's more for what are you going to do outside? And I think you can be pretty strategic about it. But on campus, we just have a lot of work to do, and you know, make sure you're not doing too much.
And I will say generically, there's some things that it makes that are more helpful than others. So if your department has a you know, colloquium, invited speaker series of any sort, that's a great thing to do. You can invite people in that you may want to consider recommending as external reviewers, or that you think might be collaborators, or that can give you advice on your research or a book proposal. If you're in a program that, you know, where you're expected to work with grad students, being on the graduate student recruiting committee, so you know who's available to recruit, is a great thing to do. Being in charge of comprehensive exams is soul-sucking if you're an assistant professor. Don't do it. Can put you in the middle of, you know, arguments between your colleagues. They shouldn't be asking you to do that. Accreditation, no, as an assistant professor. It's really important, but people who understand the curriculum and have been at the university longer should be doing that. You know, designing a new program within your department, maybe, but you shouldn't be chairing it. Other people want to.
I'm chuckling as a member and a colleague with Monique and Adjuan in the College of Education and Human Sciences. And I recognize that Monique doesn't have those luxuries because there are certain departmental constraints. For example, fewer faculty, basically recruiting an entire program in her program in counseling. She is, as an assistant professor, the only, right now, the only untenured tenure track person in the program, if not the sometimes what may feel like, although she has other faculty in the program, in this case, Christopher Goodrich, who is now in college administration, so as an associate dean. And sometimes those are the constraints, right? Do you need to be there? And then as Cristina, as you were saying, like there's a lot of work to be done, and some of it you just can't help, because if you're the only one there, then you kind of have to. And so I think that Irene, am I pronouncing correctly? Irene, your point about being mindful of and I'm having a moment here for a minute, but I'm not going to say it as eloquently as you did. But in thinking about that work, if sometimes the service, the best service that you can do is doing really good research and really good teaching, because the other things are, for lack of a better phrasing, I'm going to say above the pay grade, but you know, other people kind of have to figure it out. We need faculty. You can't carry that on your own. You need more money. You know, you can't carry that on your own. So you just do what you can manage well, and do that really well. The other things, maybe not worry about it. And we are colleagues in the same program. So I understand what you're thinking, you know, as enrollment continues to dwindle, we're managing that. We need more students so that we can strengthen the department. And yet in your lane as assistant professor, that's not quite you're not going to do that on your own. So teach really well, do your research really well, and be a contributing voice, but don't try to carry it all, right? Don't try to carry it all, because that is when it becomes overwhelming and really not productive.
Yeah, I agree. Like, none of us are good to anyone if we're totally overcommitted. So saying yes to that 5th committee because you feel bad saying no does not benefit you, and it doesn't benefit the committee, right? And so I think, where that balance point is personal, but you know where it is. And so figuring out where it is for you. And I think there was one slide that Julia had that said, saying yes to something is saying no to something else. So figure out, what are you going to be saying no to, and are you okay with that, right? And that includes what we haven't talked about, is which all of us have life outside of whatever room you're sitting in right now. And that's important too. And so, not losing sight of that either, and recognizing that it's Friday and hopefully you're going to do something fun this weekend, because that's important too.
I have a question, if it's okay.
Go for it. Yes.
I have a question about service to the field or to the discipline or to the profession. Because I've heard a few other things. One of the panelists today said, that's not really worth your time. Focus on what we need to do and get accomplished at the university. But I've heard other things as well. And I saw, Julia, that you wrote that service to the profession is part of what is expected for promotion to full. Could you all talk a little bit more about what that might look like, what the range is, and what in particular might be expected? I know there is a very big range. I've seen my colleagues who have really strong service to the profession, but I kind of just want to know what the range is that is acceptable for promotion to full.
I'll start by saying the range is huge. And it does, and the range goes from organized a meeting at a regional or local level for part of my professional organization to was president of a professional organization to, from assistant editor of a journal to, being on editor, assistant editor for multiple journals or editor of a journal. And some of this comes down to, I think, depends on your field, depends on what you enjoy doing and are good at, what will help your research. There's a lot of professional organizations where helping organize a national meeting or an international meeting or a local meeting is both fun and helps you get to know other people in your field. There's other organizations where the same work is soul destroying because there's so much of the administrative pieces that you have to do rather than the kind of more fun program planning pieces. And this is a piece that really is discipline and individually specific, depending on what the opportunities are. But partly, being visible in your profession is important so you can get the external reviewers. And I'll let other people chime in.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I would say, having sat on the College Promotion and Tenure Review Committee, is it is definitely widely variable, but I think to the extent that some of that is in your profile, it does, as Julia kind of just suggested, hint at your national reputation, which is part of what they're looking for at promotion to full. And so, obviously things like citation counts and those kinds of things have to do with national reputation, but so too does being asked to do things by your disciplinary colleagues.
Yeah, I think also, at least I've done a lot of it because it has advanced my research. You meet new people. Let's say in the beginning, you can be associate editor in a journal that you already been publishing during your PhD or your postdoc, kind of like a smaller, kind of like more specific journal. But then I've tried to become associate editors of journals that are slightly out, or more general out of my field, because that way I've met a lot of people who maybe now reviewing my grants or, you know, reviewing my papers. I was really strategic about that, but also maybe if you can also choose to do things in journals that are advancing all the things that you really believe in. Like for me, again, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now I'm associate editor in a journal that it's really committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm doing a lot to change how papers get reviewed, how editors are chosen, how reviewers are chosen, and then they do a lot of webinars on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they remove biases in publishing that have to do with inequality. So for me, saying yes to being an editor in the journal was fulfilling two different things, that my mission for the EI as well as my academic mission. So if there's things like that that you can kind of like kill two birds with one stone, I would say it's more satisfying.
And I think Tina says in the chat, definitely do service to the profession. Be careful about being superwoman at the assistant professor level. And I think it's really important to distinguish between what reasonable professional involvement at the assistant professor level is versus the associate professor level. You really can't afford a lot of time into professional things that for professional communities or societies that take away from your research and getting, you know, publications and grants written. So you want to be careful about the committees you're on for professional societies, particularly when you're an assistant professor, because there's a lot you have to figure out. There's just a lot to figure out. And I think particularly as an assistant professor, the job looks really different every year, the first couple of years. And you want to give yourself time to get used to that before you take on too many duties. I think at professional societies as an assistant professor, the time to really expand those is as an associate professor, when you've got a little more security in your teaching and scholarship programs, I think is the sort of the different messages you're hearing. Other people want to comment?
I'll just agree with what I've heard, and I think the advice to be strategic, again, that intentionality is really important. Also with national service and international service, if those are, for example, the journal, and I'm not sure what the outlet is. Irene, what's the journal you're working with? What is?
eLife.
Okay, and thinking about, for example, if one way is to sit maybe on the editorial board or get involved with as an advisement on the advisory board, if you're thinking about this potentially as a publishing outlet, or if these are your folks, right? These are the people that you are citing, then it may serve you really well to be very involved with that particular outlet. I'm really involved with AERA and have been at multiple levels, from book review editor, associate editor, to now program chair for the meeting. And, you know, I think it's been that progression, like an interest in the organization. Excuse me, American Educational Research Association, and take for granted, talk to the same people, but so the interest maybe in the national organization and getting involved in that and thinking about how your service choices are going to put you in contact with your folk. These are the people who are leading in your field, and the people with whom you are collaborating. Lisa talked about potential collaborations. And I think that's essential in that way. But I think balance is the key word. You don't want to be so all stressed out with all your national commitments, and then nothing is happening in your university community, right? Everybody has to pitch in. I do agree with that, to Tina's point. So, ditto.
One other thing I forgot that you can also kind of like use to negotiate, I think Julia briefly mentioned it in her PowerPoint, is that you could say, oh, no, not there, but next year, or, oh yeah, I would love to join to be an associate editor, but right now it's a bad timing because I'm teaching or because I'm still chair or something else, and then you can just email back to say, not right now, but maybe could I start as of, August 1st or something, so that you you know that you can start to say no to something else to replace that piece of the puzzle with something else. It's okay to have some sort of like in-between answer where you don't close the door, but you know, you're still, because it is, you know, like sometimes these opportunities are like, it's too good to be true, but right now it's not the right time, right? So maybe, you know, people, as at least particularly I feel as I get older, like people are really okay with that flexibility of you starting later or starting the following year, or, you know, like they asked me to chair the COI committee for the whole university when I was literally, well, I started when I was on maternity leave, that committee, and then within 1 year they wanted me to chair, and I'm like, I don't sleep at night. You know, I haven't slept in 5 years. I can't do this. So I said no, and somebody stepped in for 1 year, and now I'm taking. I took over last month now as a chair, but I said no the first year, and now I am. But you know what I mean, that you can always negotiate. That is part of our job.
And if you get asked to do something you really want to do and can't do it, not only can you negotiate, you can follow back up. You don't have to wait for someone to ask you again. You can, you know, follow up with someone at the right time and say, hey, I couldn't do this when you asked me last year, but I really am interested in, you know, being on this committee or running for this office or something this time around. And you can remind them that you're interested. The other thing I'll say, you know, particularly at the assistant professor level, a really great sneaky thing to do is find service that directly benefits yourself. NSF is always looking for people to be on panels and to review grants. And if you can get to review grants or be on a panel for something that you want to submit to the next time around, that's a great thing to do. So anything like that, you know, if you're in a field where it's actually really competitive to get abstracts selected, you know, then be on the program planning committee or the review committee, so you know more of what's expected. That can be a great way that then benefits your research and scholarship progress. Tryphenia.
I just want to underscore that committee that you talked about, Julia, in your slide deck, the committee of no, but also I want to think about it as an advisory council. You know who those people are, and you can go and say, I've been asked to do this. I don't think there's anything in my career that I've done where I haven't reached out to others to say, my close network, my folk who are going to keep it 100% and keep it real, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. And also think about the benefits, right? For me, where there's nothing I've done where I haven't sought counsel. So if there's one little piece of advice I could offer, that would be something I would really encourage you to do.
Do we have another question, or should I ask the panel another question?
I was thinking about what you just said, Julia, about the NSF panel stuff, which, you know, for me, when I was an assistant professor, it was a great way to meet other PIs and, you know, make connections. But, you know, you're kind of doing service, but you can go back and then use it as reason. What I did is like, oh, I met all of these amazing scientists when I was in panel. And then what I did, invite them to give talks at UNN, you know, so then you kind of like strengthen that service with more of your research kind of network. So you can also be strategic about that when you do those things.
Yeah, I think an overall message is it's not cheating to figure out how to make your research, teaching, and service lives overlap as much as you can. Anything you can double count and use in different ways and leverage, you know, that's great. So feel free to ask questions or put things in the chat, but I am going to ask the panelists now, how good are you at taking your own advice? And let's
start?
Whoever wants to start can start.
Because it's research day today in biology, and I don't know how I didn't know that. And I agreed to talk here today, and I still have 5 posters to judge. So I'm going to tell you, I'm really bad at it. But, you know, for example, I always said I would never be chair, and now I'm chair. And then I'm doing this, this panel on like one of our busiest days of the year. And so at lunch, Helen Wearing was laughing at me because she thought I was completely inappropriate. I was a bad influence for you guys. But I mean, the stuff that I do is fun. And yes, I have that luxury now because I'm a professor, but I try to make sure I'm overwhelming myself with fun things and that bring me joy and make me love my department, for example. So, and with that, if you don't mind, I'm going to go judge my last 5 posters.
Thank you, Tina. We appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
I'm going to get to as soon as we finish.
I'll see you out there, Rennie.
All right, Irene, do you want to go next then? So you can go judge posters?
Yeah, I'm also terrible, so I always say yes to everything. It's a nightmare. But a few months ago, I managed to say something. I'm really proud of it. And I just come now from this. I did another panel this morning in psychology about professional struggles during your academic career. And we discussed this a little bit, and we were talking about having this list of no's. You know, everything that you have been able to say no to, keep a list of it. So that one thing that I realized is I don't have the list yet, but I'm going to start doing it now. And then I got this invitation to write a book. Like, I don't know when it was, last October or something. It was the first time ever that I said no. It was because I did this course about how to be a better faculty mentor. It was a whole 8-week summer thing last summer. But it was an NIH-funded award by the Health and Science Center, and they allow faculty from main campus to be there. So it was all 8 weeks about how to be a better faculty mentor for junior faculty. And now they're writing a whole book, and they asked me to have a whole chapter on mentoring junior faculty. And I'm like, I can't do that. And today, all of a sudden, I had completely forgotten about it for like 6 months. And today I remember that I had said no to that. And it was so nice that I hadn't thought about it in 6 months, which means that it wasn't meaningful to me. You know what I mean? So I think that having the list of no's, and then all of a sudden you go and read it and you're like, I had even completely forgotten about it. It means that it wasn't that important. So I think now on I'm going to use that, because if it keeps coming back to your head, like I should have said yes, I should have said yes, then yeah, you know, maybe it was the wrong choice. But if you haven't even thought about it twice, it's probably the right choice. But I suck at it, so.
I love that. I'm going to add, keep a list of no's to the recommendations. I love it. Tryphenia.
A list of no's, that's not, that probably will work, but that would just make me feel horrible, because I imagine it's going to get long and long, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do it. So I'd have to manage the list of no's, but that's interesting to think about, especially with projects that I may want to tap into later. I could see it as maybe not now, but some goals down the road. So am I good at taking my own advice? No, I'm working at it. I'm getting better. I think there's a strength in being intentional about what I'm doing. And I also recognize too, that if I'm not depending on my close network, of counsel, and I'm not thinking through my choices, right? Or if I'm just randomly asking, that the opinions that I will get from the general public are just that, their opinions, and their reasons, right? That someone would encourage me to do something, someone with whom I'm thinking people outside the council here, that would strongly encourage me to please say yes, right? There are reasons for that. And then there'll also similarly be reasons to encourage me or discourage me from taking on something else. And so I think that there's a challenge, especially, I mean, from my experiences as a Black faculty member, as a Black woman faculty member, we're 1%, and the numbers continue to drop nationally. And so while, you know, that was the interesting fact I opened with, it's not unique to me, but it's something that figures into everything I do, every yes and every no, and everything I'll consider today, short and long term. So I'm getting better, right? I used to work with a program when I was an undergraduate student, and this faculty member with whom I worked was so phenomenal. And she would approach these middle schoolers and she'd ask them how they were doing. And the expectation for the response was, I'm truly wonderful and getting better. And so that's something I've carried with me. So I'm truly wonderful and I'm getting better at it.
Lisa.
I mean, no, but yes. Like, I'll say this. I am pretty good at saying no to things that aren't meaningful to me, unless the person who's asking is really meaningful to me, and then it's a little more of a struggle. The one thing that I think has helped me throughout my career with the saying no is that balance in a broad sense is a real priority for me. And it always has been, like, even in grad school. And I tell my grad students, if you can't figure it out now, you will not figure it out later. So that is and always has been a priority for me. So one of the things I always think about is, can I do this, add it to what I'm doing, or what am I going to have to give up and still do the things both at work and outside of work that I want to be able to do? And I really oftentimes wrestle with that, but I want the answer to be yes. So that's kind of my guiding logic when I'm deciding on things. And sometimes that might mean, yes, but you're going to have to like restructure in significant ways. And that's okay. Like, change is okay, but I really want to make sure the answer is still yes, in some fashion.
Thank you. Other questions?
I just want to add to that, Julia, and thinking about the day, the calendar. If there's no space in the calendar in your day-to-day for you to stop and have your lunch, you stop and just breathe, then it's either there's something you need to do something about that. So what can you comfortably handle? You know, I think we have that 40-40-20, right? Think of 40% research, 40% teaching, and then 20% service. Think about that. It's not inverted in terms of counting hours, but then also think about where you fit in. There's the research, the teaching, and service, and then where are you and those things and people that you care about, where are they fitting in to that total percentage there?
And I also think sometimes we forget that we're not the only person that can do this. Like, if you say no, someone else can do it. And frankly, someone else probably should step up and do it, right? So.
Agree. Don't carry it. Don't feel like you have to carry it.
Yeah.
Yeah, another thing that I've been, that I realize as I take a lot more service over the last few years is how much less time I have to spend with my students, Like, I used to be so much more involved all the time with my grad students, and, you don't realize, but like slowly but surely you start to like shrink how many hours you can be directly sitting down with them, or, and right now my 1st of April resolution is to go back to spending more time with my students, because, when I think about outreach and, all of that is like helping the world, right? Like, you want to help everybody. You are doing all of these things, the diversity, equity, and inclusion to help others. But the truth is that we are in New Mexico, where training our grad students and training our undergrads already diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we are here to help a really poor community and people who have no resources. So I have to kind of like reset my mind all the time that all the time I would spend with my own students is also, super valuable, maybe more even than others. And maybe they will, be more grateful than helping others that are not here. So I try to go back to just being in the lab, being with them, making sure that I spend time with them, because then they will leave and then I will regret not having to spend more time with them. So
I think that's a great point, because I was getting ready to say something to take away from this is this balance is something you have to revisit all the time. You don't get to just like make a decision and move on. This is something you have to revisit all the time as you hit different parts of your career and have different opportunities. And So Irene's example is great. This is something we all have to wrestle with all the time, and the decisions look different at different parts in your career and different parts in terms of your personal life and, you know, how things are going with your family. If you have kids, how old your kids are, things like that. Those really can and should impact these decisions. You know, there are things you can do after your kids are older, you know, that you cannot do while your kids are young, and you should not feel bad if you can't do those things now. Lots of these opportunities come up again.
Agreed. Says the mother 2-year-old who is like doing 1 million things of service that I shouldn't be doing. But
All right, so I think this is a good time to end. I would like to thank our panelists for saying yes and not no. And thank you all for attending, and enjoy your weekend. As I think Lisa said, maybe go do something fun this weekend. You've earned it. Thank you very much. Take care.
thank you, Julia. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Likewise, good to see you all, colleagues. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.